In the quiet village of Neiander, where the roads were dusty and the air smelled of mango trees, lived a girl named Lema. She didn't have money, fancy shoes, or sparkling jewelry. Her clothes were simple, sometimes faded from too many washes under the hot sun. But there was something about her that made people stop and look twice. Her eyes always carried a light, like someone who had seen pain but chose peace. Her smile was soft, like a morning breeze, and her words felt like cool water on a hot day. Lema didn't need riches to be rich. Her heart was full, and that was enough. Every single morning, before the rooster's crow fully faded into the sky, Lema would walk barefoot through the dew-covered grass to the banks of the river Oloro. She would kneel gently on the ground, press her hands together, and close her eyes. She prayed, not for herself, but for others, for the children who went to sleep hungry, for the old man who coughed all night, for the mothers with tired backs and the fathers with calloused hands. She even prayed for the strangers who never once looked her way or said thank you. It didn't matter. Lema believed that kindness was a seed, and one day it would grow. People in the village saw her. They noticed her, even if they pretended not to. Some said she was strange. Others said she was wasting her time. But deep down, many knew there was something different about her. Old Mama Chesa, the village's oldest woman, would often shake her head and smile when Lema walked by. "That girl," she would say, tapping her cane on the ground. "One day the world will know her name." Children followed her sometime, holding onto her skirt, asking questions about God and dreams. She would laugh gently and tell them stories. Her voice had a way of calming storms, even the ones people carried inside. And when someone cried, Lema didn't just say, "It will be okay." She sat with them, held their hand, and prayed. Her presence was like medicine, and her prayers were like a shield, silent, invisible, but strong. Even though Lema had little, she gave what she could: a bowl of food, a shoulder to lean on, a listening ear. No act was too small for her. In a world where people often shouted to be heard, Lema's quiet kindness echoed the loudest. She was the kind of girl who believed that even in the darkest night, a single candle could still shine. And every morning, by the river's edge, she lit that candle again, with her prayers, her hope, and her heart. Taban came from a world of flashing lights, loud music, and power. In Lusaka, he was known for his flashy lifestyle, expensive cars, wild parties, and constant drama. With a powerful politician as his father, Taban never heard the word no. He moved through life like a prince, stepping on anyone who dared challenge him. Rules didn't apply to him. Respect, he didn't believe in it. He laughed at people who prayed and mocked those who lived simply. To him, kindness was weakness, and humility was for the poor. But that all changed one night when his name exploded all over the city in a scandal. A video leaked, Taban drunk, shouting, insulting reporters, and even disrespecting a village elder during a charity event his father had arranged. The media went wild. His father, furious and humiliated, called him into his study with eyes like fire. "Enough," he thundered. "You will go to Neiander. You will learn what real life means." So Taban, with all his pride packed in suitcases and his ego stuffed into his designer sunglasses, was shipped off to the quiet village of Neiander. As soon as he stepped out of the old van that brought him, the red mud clung to his white sneakers like glue. He looked around, eyes filled with disgust. Thatched roofs, goats in the streets, children running barefoot. He laughed, loud and mocking. "This isn't a village, it's a jungle." People stared, but said nothing. He strutted past them, dragging his suitcase through the dust like he was on a runway. "I can't believe I'm breathing this air," he muttered under his breath, wiping his nose with a silk handkerchief. The village children pointed at his shiny clothes. Some giggled, others just blinked in confusion. They had never seen someone like him, so polished, yet so cold. Even when elders greeted him kindly, he ignored them. "Don't you people have real roads here?" He snapped at one man who offered him a place to sit. He couldn't hide his disgust. The cows, the chickens, the silence. It was all too strange for him. He missed the city noise, the clubs, the attention. To him, Neiander was a punishment, a forgotten place with forgotten people. He believed he was above it all, above the prayers, above the traditions, above the kindness. But the village watched, quietly, patiently, because Neiander had a way of humbling even the proudest hearts. And deep within the calm of that red mud village, something was waiting for Taban, something he could never see coming. It was a sunny morning in Neiander when Taban first crossed paths with Lema. He was walking through the market, fanning himself with irritation, still not used to the heat or the buzzing flies. His shirt was crisp, his watch shiny, and his nose wrinkled at the smell of smoked fish and fresh cassava. Villagers greeted him, but he barely nodded. Then he saw her, Lema, standing calmly beside a wooden stall, arranging mangoes with gentle care. Her eyes caught his, and without hesitation, she smiled warmly. "Welcome to Neiander," she said, her voice soft, sincere, like a breeze on a hot day. Taban scoffed. He looked her up and down, her simple dress, bare feet, and the calm peace on her face. He chuckled loudly, drawing the attention of nearby villagers. "You pray too much, girl," he said mockingly, waving a hand in the air. "Do your prayers make money rain from the sky?" Lema's smile faded just a little. She didn't reply with anger or insult. Instead, she bowed her head respectfully and said quietly, "One day, you'll understand." That only made Taban laugh harder as he walked away, shaking his head. Dream on, village girl. From that day on, every time Taban saw her, she was either helping someone or kneeling by the river, praying, and every time he couldn't help himself. He threw words at her like stones. "Still begging your invisible gods," he said once, walking by as she sat in prayer near the riverbank. Another time he mocked, "Tell your gods to buy you some shoes." Villagers began to notice. Some muttered under their breath, others looked away in shame. One elder even shook his head and said, "That boy's mouth will be his downfall." But through it all, Lema remained calm. She never shouted back. She never cursed him. She simply smiled, prayed, and kept moving. To Taban, it was a joke. Her silence made it easy to laugh. Her peace irritated him more than it should have. Deep inside, he didn't understand why someone with nothing could still walk with so much grace, why someone so poor could still smile so gently, and it bothered him. What he didn't know was that Lema's prayers weren't just words. They were seeds being planted, quietly, gently, beneath the surface. And one day, the harvest would come. One day, Taban would no longer be the one laughing. The village of Neiander was buzzing with excitement. It was the day of the annual Moon Harvest Festival, a time when drums echoed through the fields and laughter danced in the air. Children wore beaded crowns. Elders sat beneath shaded trees telling old stories, and the aroma of roasted maize and spicy stew filled every corner. Everyone gathered in the village square, dressed in their finest. Even Taban showed up, though he rolled his eyes at the traditional music and the barefoot dancers. But this year, Taban had something different planned. A prank, mean, loud, and designed to embarrass the one person he couldn't stop teasing, Lema. She was kneeling by the tree near the festival drums, eyes closed, hands clasped, whispering a quiet prayer for peace, for rain, for the joy of the villagers. Taban watched her from a distance, smirking, holding a large clay pot filled with cold water. He whispered to a group of boys, "Watch this. Let's show the holy girl how we celebrate in the city." Then, with the crowd distracted by music, he crept up behind her and, splash! Water poured over Lema's head, soaking her simple dress and dripping down her face. The drummers paused. The dancers stopped. The entire festival froze for a moment. Gasps filled the air. Some women covered their mouths. Children stared wide-eyed. An elder dropped his staff in shock, and then came the laughter. Taban's cruel, loud laughter as he shouted, "Behold, the holy fool of Neiander." Lema sat there, dripping, silent for a long second. Everyone watched, waiting for her to cry, to scream, to run away. But she didn't. Instead, she stood slowly, calmly wiped her face with the edge of her shawl, and turned to look at Taban, not with anger, but with a strange softness in her eyes. And then, in a quiet voice that somehow silenced the entire square, she said, "I'll still pray for you." The words hit the crowd like thunder. Taban's smile faltered. Just for a second, something in her voice, in her calmness, made the laughter catch in his throat. He looked around and saw the villagers no longer smiling. Some shook their heads. Others whispered under their breath. But Taban, proud and stubborn, quickly laughed again and said, "Relax, it was just water. She needed a bath anyway." He walked away, waving it off. But deep inside, he felt something shift. It was small, almost invisible, but it was there, a seed of shame, planted in silence. Lema, on the other hand, simply walked away, head high, spirit unbroken, and heart still full of prayer. The sky was turning orange as the sun sank behind the hills of Neiander. The festival had ended, but Taban's pride hadn't. That evening, with a bottle of palm wine in hand and laughter still fresh in his voice, he bragged to a group of young men near the edge of the village. A bush pig darted from the trees nearby, and in a sudden burst of foolish energy, Taban shouted, "Watch me catch that thing!" before sprinting after it. He didn't know the pig had dashed into the forbidden side of the forest, a place even hunters avoided after dark. The trees there were thick and twisted, and the air felt colder. But Taban, drunk with both wine and arrogance, kept running. He ducked through bushes, jumped over roots, and laughed wildly. Then crack! The ground gave way beneath his feet. He fell hard into a hidden hunter's pit. The air knocked out of his lungs. Pain shot through his leg, twisted badly, maybe broken. He screamed in agony, gripping his knee. Dirt and leaves rained down on him as he tried to climb, but the walls were steep and his body was too weak. Night came fast, and with it, the forest changed. Owls hooted, wolves howled in the distance. Strange glowing eyes blinked from the dark, watching. The buzzing insects turned to eerie silence, then sudden rustles from unseen animals. Fear crept into Taban's chest like a cold hand squeezing his heart. "Help!" he screamed. "Somebody! Anybody! Please!" But no one answered. His pride melted into panic. Tears filled his eyes. He cried, called out again, his voice breaking. He thought about home, his father, the city lights. But none of that mattered now. All he wanted was to be safe, to be seen, to be saved. Then, just when he felt like giving up, he heard it. Footsteps. Soft but certain. Not a wild animal. A human. A figure appeared at the edge of the pit, holding a lantern. And it was her, Lema. Her eyes widened as she saw him in the pit. Dirty, hurt, and scared. "Lema!" he gasped, his voice barely a whisper. She didn't say a word at first. She set the lantern down and knelt. With calm hands, she pulled a vine rope from her bag, one she used to carry firewood. Carefully, slowly, she lowered it into the pit. "Grab on," she said gently. He stared at her, ashamed, broken, silent, but he reached for the rope. Lema walked carefully through the quiet forest path, her small lantern glowing gently in the darkness. She had promised the village healer she would fetch herbs before dawn, special leaves that only bloomed at night near the whispering trees. With her basket in hand, she listened to the rustle of leaves, the hoot of an owl, and the distant croak of frogs near the stream. But then, just as she bent down to pick a sprig of moonleaf, she froze. A sound, faint, broken, a voice. "Help, please, someone." She straightened slowly, heart beating fast. The voice came again, weak and desperate. Her eyes widened. "That sounds like Taban?" Without wasting another second, she followed the sound, careful with every step. The deeper she went, the darker it became. But Lema didn't turn back. She held the lantern higher and moved faster. Then she saw it, a hole in the ground, covered with broken twigs. She rushed closer and gasped. Taban was at the bottom, his face pale, his clothes torn, and his leg bent at an awkward angle. He was shivering, bleeding, his pride replaced with pure fear. When he looked up and saw her face, he blinked as if he were dreaming. "You?" he croaked. "Yes," Lema answered, her voice soft but steady. "You need help." He couldn't believe it. After all his mocking, after the festival prank, after the way he laughed at her, she still came. She still cared. Without hesitation, Lema took off her shawl, tied it to a vine she had in her basket, and fashioned a makeshift rope. It wasn't strong, but it was all she had. She lowered it carefully, guiding him with calm words. "Hold tight, I'll pull slowly." With every bit of strength she had, she pulled him up inch by inch, until finally he reached the edge and collapsed beside her, breathing hard. But it wasn't over. A low growl echoed in the distance. Then another. Lema's heart jumped. She turned and saw glowing eyes in the trees. Hyenas. Maybe more. She didn't panic. She helped Taban sit up, wrapped an arm around him, and began dragging him toward the nearest cave shelter she knew, one the elders used during storms. Branches scratched her skin. Thorns tore her dress. But she didn't stop. Taban leaned on her heavily, pain etched into his face. He couldn't speak, but his eyes watched her in a way they never had before, with awe. She didn't have magic powers or gold, but in that moment, Lema was the strongest person in the forest. She saved him, and she didn't need thanks. The night air was thick with danger. As Lema helped Taban, into a narrow crevice between two giant rocks. It was the only shelter she could find deep in the forest. The space was just wide enough for them to crouch side by side. Taban winced as he settled against the cold stone, his injured leg throbbing with pain. His clothes were damp, his hands trembling, and for the first time in his life, the loud, proud Taban was completely silent. Outside, the forest grew darker. The moon was hidden behind clouds, and the wind carried strange, terrifying sounds. A chilling howl echoed through the trees. Then another, hyenas. Closer now. Taban's breath quickened. He had always been fearless in the city, racing cars, arguing with powerful people, laughing at consequences. But now, with only darkness and wild animals around him, he felt like a small child. He turned to Lema, who sat beside him calmly, her hands folded over her knees. "How are you not scared?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Lema didn't answer right away. She closed her eyes. Her lips moved softly. Then aloud, she began to pray. "Please, protect us, Father. Cover us with your light. Let no harm touch us here." Her voice was low but steady, like a soft river flowing through fear. Taban listened. With every word, he felt something strange. His panic began to fade. The howls outside grew distant, almost like echoes bouncing away. The forest seemed to still itself around them, as if listening too. Taban looked at her, eyes wide. "What are you?" he asked, his voice filled with awe. "Are you an angel?" Lema opened her eyes and gave a small smile. "No," she said simply. "Just a girl with faith." Her words settled deep inside him. They weren't loud, but they struck something he had never felt before. Peace. Outside, the hyenas moved on, their footsteps fading into the night. No animals came near. No danger touched them. Lema leaned against the stone and closed her eyes again, still whispering prayers for protection and healing. Taban, despite the pain and fear, felt his body relax. The forest didn't seem so wild anymore. The darkness wasn't so heavy. It was as if her prayers had built an invisible shield around them. He had mocked her once, called her foolish, laughed at her prayers. But now, in the heart of the wild, it was those very prayers that held them safe. For the first time in his life, Taban stayed silent, not because he had nothing to say, but because he finally understood something greater than himself. And that night, beside a girl he once called strange, he began to see what true strength really looked like. When they returned to Neiander, everything felt different. The same trees stood tall, the same breeze whispered through the village paths. But something inside Taban had shifted. He no longer strutted through the village with loud music and fancy clothes. The designer sunglasses that once sat proudly on his face were gone. So was the arrogant smirk he used to wear like armor. Lema quietly tended to his wounds. She crushed herbs with gentle hands, wrapped his leg with clean cloth, and gave him warm soup, without ever bringing up the things he had said before. Her silence wasn't cold, it was kind. It gave Taban space to think, and think he did. He watched how Lema greeted everyone, even those who ignored her. He saw her visit the orphan center every morning, bringing smiles and small gifts. He noticed how the village elders always had a full bowl of food because she made sure no one went hungry. She never did it for praise. She simply did it because it was right. One morning, Taban woke up before the sun and found himself walking toward the river Eloro, the same place he had once mocked, the same place he had laughed at her for praying. She was already there, as usual, kneeling, her hands folded, her head bowed. She didn't flinch when he stepped near. She didn't turn to look. She just kept praying. He stood for a long time, unsure of what to do. Then slowly, awkwardly, he knelt beside her. It felt strange at first. He had never done this before, not sincerely. He closed his eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry for everything I said, for how I treated you." Lema opened her eyes and turned to him. Her smile was soft, warm like morning sunlight. "Now you understand," she said gently. That day, the village noticed something beautiful. Taban began showing up at the orphan center, helping fix the broken fence. He carried heavy baskets for old women and sat beside lonely elders, listening to their stories. He bought food from the market not just for himself, but to share with those who needed it. No one told him to do it. No one asked. He simply changed. People whispered again in Neiander, but this time with wonder. "Is that really the city boy? What did that girl do to him?" But Lema never claimed credit. She simply continued her prayers, now joined by a heart that had once laughed at her, but now beat beside hers in quiet faith. And deep inside, Taban felt something he had never truly known before. peace. As the days passed, something inside Taban grew, something he couldn't ignore any longer. The man who had once dismissed the simple beauty of Neiander, the man who had mocked Lema's kindness, now found himself captivated by her. It wasn't just the way she helped others, it was the way she made the world feel softer. Her laughter, gentle and bright like the morning sun, warmed the hearts of everyone she met. Taban began noticing little things, how she would stop in the middle of the village to help an elderly woman with her basket, or how she never turned anyone away, even when they had nothing to offer in return. Her kindness had a quiet power, and the more he saw it, the more he admired it. One evening, as the sky painted itself in shades of orange and pink, Taban sat beside Lema by the river. The air was still, and the sounds of the village were distant. For the first time, Taban truly felt at peace. He looked at her, his voice soft but sincere. "I've never met anyone like you." Lema turned her gaze to him, her eyes full of understanding but no judgment. "I used to laugh at your prayers," he continued, a hint of regret in his tone. "Now, I can't sleep without them." Her eyes widened for a moment, but she didn't speak. She just smiled, as if she had known all along that he would come to this realization. She didn't need to say anything. Her quiet strength had already spoken for her. From that day on, Taban wasn't the same. He no longer saw the world in terms of money or status. He saw it through Lema's eyes, through the lens of kindness, faith, and love. He wanted to give back, to make a difference, just like she did. Together they built something special, a small classroom for the children of the village who couldn't afford an education. Taban used his city skills to help with construction, bringing in materials, and organizing work, while Lema helped the children learn, teaching them how to read, write, and dream. They called it the House of Light. It was more than just a classroom. It was a place where hope could grow, where children could escape the struggles of their everyday lives and find something brighter. Taban had helped create it, but it was Lema's spirit that had brought it to life. As the weeks turned into months, their bond deepened. What had started as a simple connection born from Lema's kindness began to evolve into something more powerful. Taban realized that in the most unexpected place, in the middle of this village he had once mocked, he had found something he hadn't been looking for: love. And it wasn't just the love of the village or the children they helped. It was the quiet, steady love between him and Lema. A love that had grown in the most unlikely way, rooted in humility, forgiveness, and the belief that faith can change everything. The day Taban finally gathered the courage to ask Lema to be his wife, the entire village could feel the magic in the air. It wasn't in the grand gestures or the show of wealth, because there was none of that. It was in the sincerity of the moment, in the way Taban's heart had changed, and how he was finally ready to commit to the woman who had completely transformed him. In the village square, the crowd quietly gathered, sensing something extraordinary was about to happen. Taban walked forward, his hands trembling slightly, but his heart steady. He knelt down on one knee, holding out a small handmade ring, the kind that wasn't made of gold, but of pure meaning. His voice was steady, but there was a rawness to it that couldn't be faked. "Will you be the woman who turned my soul around, forever?" he asked. His eyes locked with hers. Lema blinked, overwhelmed with emotion. Tears filled her eyes as she looked down at him, the same man who once mocked her prayers, now asking for her hand with all the sincerity of someone who had truly found their purpose in life. She had watched him grow from a prideful boy into a humble man, someone who now shared her values of kindness and faith. The crowd around them erupted in applause, clapping and cheering for the love that had blossomed in the most unexpected way. Even the village chief, a man who had seen many things in his lifetime, was moved. He wiped his eyes as he watched the young couple, unable to hold back his emotions. Lema smiled, her heart full of love and gratitude. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I will." Their wedding was simple, but filled with love. It took place under the grand baobab tree, the same tree where they had shared their quiet moments of reflection, where their bond had grown from a quiet respect to a deep, unshakable love. The whole village gathered to celebrate the union of the two. There was no extravagant ceremony, no fancy dresses or suits, just Lema in a modest gown, Taban in simple attire, and a love so pure that it didn't need anything more. Years later, when Taban's old friends from the city visited Neiander, they couldn't believe their eyes. The wild city boy they had known, the one who lived for parties and pride, was now standing humbly beside his wife, praying with her by the river and helping the villagers in every way possible. The man who had once scoffed at everything simple and real had become someone who embodied both. He had found his place in the world, and it was beside Lema, the woman who had turned his life around. The city friends stood speechless, unable to recognize the man they once knew. They had seen his arrogance and his selfishness, but they were now seeing something even more powerful, a man who had learned the true meaning of love, faith, and humility. They couldn't help but wonder, how had this transformation happened? And the answer was clear. It was Lema. It was her kindness, her unwavering faith, and her ability to see the good in him when no one else could. Their wedding had shocked everyone, but the love they shared and the life they had built together left an even deeper impact. It was a reminder that sometimes the greatest transformations come from the most unexpected places. Isn't it incredible how love and kindness can transform even the hardest hearts? Taban's journey from arrogance to humility, all because of one girl's unwavering faith, reminds us that no matter how lost we may feel, there is always hope for change. Lema's prayers didn't just save Taban, they saved a part of him he didn't even know was worth saving. Their story is a powerful reminder that kindness can heal, that faith can move mountains, and that love, no matter how unlikely, is always worth waiting for. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Share this video with someone who needs a little reminder that kindness and faith can change the world. Like the video if you believe in the power of transformation. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories like this one. Thank you for being a part of our journey, for supporting these tales that remind us of the beauty in humanity. Your likes, shares, and subscriptions mean the world to us, and they help us continue sharing these inspiring stories. Keep spreading love, keep believing in change, and keep watching for more incredible stories. Thank you.